𝗵𝗂𝗁𝗡𝗃 for bringing me here. I worked with them for about 16 years on all kinds of fun stuff. So deep relationships there, and they're a full partner. And as was mentioned, I've also worked with 𝗃𝗏, and they're also a full partner. 𝗂𝗏𝗃𝗊𝗀𝗀𝗏. So if you haven't checked them out, please do. So let's get started. I'm going to be talking about today a little bit about me. If you haven't heard of Monotype, I'm going to be talking about Monotype's 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗊𝗀 company. I'm also going to talk about culture and leadership. We're going to talk about the operating model that I put together for Monotype. So we'll be kind of going into depth there. And then we'll be talking about some iterative evolution of that and how, you guys are all familiar with iterations and application and how that works. So we'll be talking more about that too. All right, so first I'll introduce myself. If you don't know who I am, I'm David Harned. I joined Monotype in 1998, which is a long time ago. It's a little bit even kind of before the internet even. So I started as a designer, then I worked as a developer. I was a manager. I worked as a director and senior director of PMO. I worked as an engineering PMO manager. Then I ran transformation for the organization. And then I ran an enterprise PMO. Now, it says here, left Monotype in October of 2025. So if this event had happened at its originally scheduled time, I would have been the vice president of enterprise Agile PMO. I have not been in that role now for about a month. But all of this is still real. So none of this is any different. Presentation was what it was, and everything's still the same. So just, it doesn't really change anything, but I actually did it in the organization. I was there for 27 years, so I do know what I'm talking about when it comes to this organization, so no concerns there. But this is really how I see myself, okay? So this I love motorsports, I love motorcycles and cars, and this is kind of what I always felt like I was forever. So when you talk to me, think of me like that, because that's how I am, right? I'm a little kid at heart, I love this stuff, so that's who I am. If you don't know who Monotype is, they are the largest type foundry as far as IP in the world. Most of the fonts that you know are Monotype fonts, right? So that's Arial, 𝗂𝗏𝗃𝗊𝗀𝗀, 𝗏 Times New Roman, Courier, all the fonts you've heard of most likely are Monotype fonts. That doesn't mean that they all are, because they're not all Monotype fonts, but a lot of them are. And so they've acquired them through acquisitions. A lot of foundries have been acquired by Monotype. And that's not necessarily to me that they're the largest by revenue either, because they're not. But they have the most IP of any foundry in the world. All right? So that's what we'll be talking about. Now, Monotype I'm just going to kind of rip through these slides because I've got a lot more to talk about, but I'm going to move through these kind of quick. So Monotype was founded in 1897, actually, and I learned some things actually when I built this deck that I thought I knew, but turns out I didn't know exactly the right way. So it was founded in 1897 in the United States. I actually thought it was an English company, but it was actually also founded in England in 1897. So the company's 128 years old. You can see that these are some of the machines that were made. It was originally a manufacturing company, and they made different kinds of machines. Like this is a couple of the machines that they made. This is a keyboard and casting machine. Interestingly enough, the one on your left, we had in my office for a while, and I used to joke, like, this is my machine. Like when people come in, they're like, this is the machine that I work on. Obviously that wasn't true. I didn't join that early. But in any case, yeah, these are some of the machines that Monotype made. This is what project management looked like in 1912. So in case you don't know, this is kind of how people managed projects in 1912 before there were the internet and all that stuff. This is what it looked like. And I just want to call out like the beautiful handwriting that this person had, like whatever they were doing here. That's really nice. I can't write very well anymore, and I think writing was kind of a lost art now. But you get this from August 1812. This is a drawing office from England in the 1920s. And what I want to call out here in these slides is the division layer, right? So it's not as much nowadays, but back then it was like the women did the drawing, and then the men did the manufacturing. And you can see there's not a single woman in there, right? Like they're all drawing, and then all the men are illing, right, stuff. So it's really kind of fascinating to me. That's just not the case nowadays, right? So, and I don't know what it is. No one's smiling. Like, I don't know, nobody's having fun. Nobody likes their job, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe it's the cameras where they like had to hold still for a long, long time, right? I don't know. And what's the deal with this guy in the front? Like, he just looks like he's 10 years old. I don't even know. Anyway, but anyway, they're manufacturing, so you can see they're building things. They also made things other than these casting machines and keyboards and stuff like that. During World War II, they made machine guns, which is also kind of weird. But you can see this is a machine gun that was made in Monotype Works in March 29th, 1939. They had other groups, like they have culture, right? Like this is an example in the Monotype band that was going on, right? So they got together and had a band. And in the United States, they had the Monotype Club. They were obviously very patriotic too. They had their flags, right? So that was going on. This is the campus in 1973. It's an aerial view of the campus. It was huge. You can see like all of the stuff that was going on there. Now, when I joined in 1998, I guess it was probably around 2003, something like that. I would purchase 𝗂𝗶𝗁𝗀. And I was doing some work on one of their websites at the time. And when I went over there, that was the only building that was left. The rest of it was gone. And they were only using half of that building. The rest of it had been rented out to another company, right? So that's all that was left, like that, that many years later. So I didn't get to see any of that. But I actually have a wrench. Just like a Monotype on it. No, I didn't know how old that wrench was, but it predated. It was back from all of that. So here you can see an example of how they used to transfer the letter sheets from the drawing onto the metal plate that they would use. And this shows how they did it kind of all the way through the 1970s. And then this is how they went digital. They used what's called an 𝗂𝗃𝗃 tablet. And they would draw and trace the drawing and make it digital. And that's how they did that. And then you can see, this is a more modern version. So actually after the desktop revolution, right, everything went digital. Everybody started working on their PCs. And this is an example here you see where they're putting the glyphs and drawing the glyphs and putting glyphs into the glyph spaces. This is how they make font, right? And in case you didn't know, type designers, there we go, actually work on coffee and candy. So this is what they run. This is their fuel. So in case you didn't know that, this is actual evidence that that's true. So you know that I'm telling the truth. All right, so that's a brief history of Monotype. So you know what Monotype's all about. All right, so there you have that context as I'm talking now. So now I want to talk about culture. Now, Mila was talking about culture, and this is really, really critical, right? So in the last presentation, we were talking a lot about culture. Now, getting the culture right is really important as you're creating an operating model, which is what we're talking about today. If the culture's wrong, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting this operating model up and running, right? So I wanted to call that out. Now, getting the teams right is actually kind of easy. Like if you've got agile teams running, like that's cool. That's kind of basic. It's the rest of the organization that's going to be a challenge for you, right? Especially leaders. Now, if you haven't heard of this before, this is the State of Agile report. You should go look it up. It's super cool. It's provided by digital.ai. And this is the report from 2024. The 17th annual. And what I call out here was the top 7 problems that prevented organizations from adopting an agile pattern in the organization. And so you can see at the top here, leadership not understanding and putting roadblocks up, even unknowingly, right? Business teams not understanding what agile can do. Everything's siloed, culture clash, no executive sponsorship. So when we go back to 2024, these are the problems that we're keeping enterprises from being agile, right? Now, as we think about that, now, sort of where are we today, right? So everything's speeding up. I'm sure you probably felt this at work, right? So leaders are feeling more pressured, right? Managers are reverting to suboptimal patterns because that's what happens when we start applying pressure. They don't want to try anything new. They don't want it. I know this works. So let's do it this way. So I know that this is going to work. So I don't want to try anything new. Culture is kind of taking a backseat, right? You want results. We're not so much worried about culture. We want results. AI is going nuts, right? And then not only is AI doing nuts, but everybody should figure out, how do we use it? How do we leverage it best within our organization? And how do we maximize the results so we can see from this technology and from these tools? We need to adopt new ways of working that are specific to our business, and the outcomes are more critical than the process, right? So the what is more important than the how, right? Now, everybody in this room cares about how. We care about process. We care about the steps we take and the way that we do things. But business itself really cares about the results that we see from that. And you can see, I've got this quote here from 𝗂𝗂𝗍𝗃, since Scrum is one of our partners and everything. That's interesting. He's the CPO of Scrum. But you can see, he's kind of saying, we call out the shift from doing Agile to being Agile. And really what he's saying is like, there's organizations that are Agile, and then there's ones that are not doing so well, right? And it's going to eventually become, there's organizations that are Agile, and then there's organizations that are not going to survive, right? And so the good news is, of course, that you're all here and you're part of that Agile piece. So this is the 18th annual. This is from 2025. And again, I urge you guys to look at these reports because they're pretty useful. And you can see here at the top, this is how would you describe the current state of Agile across your organization? I called out a couple of ideas here. Agile's practiced across some departments, but usage is inconsistent. Hopefully some of this resonates with you guys. This is from this year, right? And then the other one I wanted to call out was, we're reevaluating how we use Agile in light of new complexity, like AI, compliance, ways of working, right? These are ones that resonated with me. So hopefully these resonate with you guys too. All right. So what I call out that at the bottom is 74% reported using a blended or hybrid approach or a homegrown framework, right? So you can't just go and adopt something right out of a book and then just assume that's going to work for your work. It's just not, right? You're going to have to figure out which pieces work, which pieces don't. How's this going to work within our organization? And then that's how you're going to bring in an operating model that's going to work for everybody. So going back to leadership and culture, again, these are all context settings I'm trying to do before I step into our model. Thinking about concepts like I work with so-and-so versus he works for me. If these are things leaders can do to set the culture, right? Thinking about the people on your team. They don't work for you, they work with you, right? That pull versus the push culture, hopefully you know what that means, right? You're not assigning work to people, you're putting work out there, and you're saying, who wants this? Who wants this job, right? Keeping the team stable, providing context, which is what I'm doing for you guys right now, being authentic, asking for feedback, right? These are just things leaders can do to help make the culture better, to help make things more transparent and help people feel more safe. Back to that idea of, the safety and psychological safety that we were just talking about the last presentation. And then there's autonomy. Right? And autonomy is an interesting thing because you want to give it to people, and even leadership will tell you they want autonomy, but saying it and doing it are two different things, right? Everybody wants to give it to the teams, but then do they actually do that? But it's important because to use an extreme example, if Johnny's got a problem in his code, you don't want to escalate that to the exec team, right? You want to fix the problems where the problem's happening. You want the person with the most knowledge of what's actually going on to be the one that's solving the problem. So you want that autonomy to be, you want the people closest to the problems to be fixing those problems. And the leadership should be creating the environment that allows that to happen. And so that's really what you want. That's the ultimate solution. And that allows leaders to be better leaders, right? And so you can see a couple of examples here about different styles of leadership, right? Your expert who's good in a crisis, right? That's the one who just says, I've got a surgeon up here, but it's he knows what to do. Just let him do it. He knows how to handle it. You've got your achiever, right? This is your leader that leads from the front, right? Hey, everybody, follow me. I know what I'm doing. It's like a consultant or somebody like that. I know how to do this. And then you've got your catalyst, right? This is your servant leader, the one that leads from the back, right? And says, what do you guys think we should do? right? Maybe focuses the team, helps the team, right? And you might say, well, which one am I? Well, the truth is you should be all of these. It just depends on the situation. Sometimes you're going to need to be any of them. So building yourself as a leader becomes super important. And if the team's autonomous, you have a chance to do that now. Because you're not so busy delegating work to everybody. Now you can work on being a better leader, right? And that's a challenge that you got to teach the leaders. Okay, now we're going to the operating model. You got that concept. First you have to do all that other stuff so that you can get into the operating model, all right? So what is an operating model? I think we all kind of know what it is, but in case you don't, this is the typical Google slide. This is the raise, you get up on Google and here's what it is. But it's an operating model is a blueprint that details how companies' people, processes, technology, and resources come together to execute strategy and deliver value to customers and stakeholders. So we're going to look at people, processes, technology, information, and metrics, and then governance. So starting with, quick detour. This is Monotype's hierarchy of strategy. And I'm just going to show you the top 3 levels because you're going to need that information as we go through this, right? So first at the top level, we've got the objectives. So the objectives are like a 1 to 3 year look at where the organization wants to be, right? And then you've got your themes, and your themes are a grouping of goals. And the goals are like a 4 to 6 month project or a chunk of value that we want to deliver as an organization. And the reason we keep it at 6 months is because we really want to be thinking about something small enough that it won't get derailed by a budgeting cycle or a calendar cycle. If it goes from December into January, or if the executives do an offsite, think of some new idea and come back. A 2-year ERP system is going to derail everything else, right? So you really want to try and, even if you have a huge project, you want to try and break it into these 6-month chunks so that you can pretty much guarantee delivery so that you can keep it here, right? So that's the idea. So keeping these in mind, objectives, themes, and goals, right? Hopefully everybody's good on that. Okay, so now people. So these are the different groups of people that we think about when we're making an operating model, right? So we've got our executives, it's pretty clear who those are. We've got our theme leaders. So we talked about those themes, groups of goals. So these are the people that are going to be on point for those different themes, right? Our themes are going to have theme charter. They're going to have OKRs or KPIs or things they're trying to achieve, right? That's what your theme leaders, they typically report to an executive or somebody like that. You've got goal leaders. The goal leaders are the people that are on point for those 4 to 6 month projects, right? They usually are somebody that works with a PM or works with an actual person to help execute that thing, right? But they're on cruise for the outcomes. You've got your managers. The managers typically run a function within the organization. Now, a goal leader might be a manager, and a manager might be a goal leader. Those two could be interchangeable. And a manager might be a team leader. So they might wear multiple hats. You got PMO, which is what I was running when I was there. And this is your execution engine, right? This is project managers, agile people, these kind of people that get things done. You got your teams. These are just teams of people that are executing things. They might be executing goals, whatever, other things. And then you got sort of the general public, like the population of Monotype. So these are all the different people that you're trying to communicate with, and you want to make sure you know who they are. All right, then you got processes. Now, this is a busy slide, so let me start from the bottom. All right, so bottom we've got our teams. All of our teams within the organization, they're all doing things. They're just on a hum, right? Agile teams just building stuff. They're building stuff. They're doing stuff. They're delivering stuff. Every 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. And you can see that this represents a 2-week cycle, which is what you're seeing across the dotted gray lines, and you can see the dates across the top. Hopefully you can see that. It's not great out there, but, and then you can see the goals at the bottom. Now remember, our goals are 4 to 6 month chunks of work, right? So once a week, those goals are coming together as a group, and they're saying, okay, how's it going, right? So they're doing their iterative stand-up style, kind of like, how are we doing, right? Are we delivering things that they're obviously doing? The teams are all delivering their stuff, but a goal, if you think about it, 4 to 6 months. So it might have multiple teams that are delivering against that goal, because it's a pretty big thing, whatever it is. It's a 4 to 6 month thing, so it may have multiple teams delivering on that. So what you see, if you look at the key here, is you've got your team members coming together, you've got your goal leadership coming together, right? And they talk about that, like, how's it going? And if they have the autonomy to hopefully fix whatever problems that they've got. If they can't, then they're gonna identify any problems that they need to escalate, right? And then they're gonna be looking for priorities that they're gonna get it from their team. So next, we've got our themes, right? Is that next row up. And those themes are also gonna meet once a week. And you can see that there's multiple goals that are contributing to a theme, right? So in that theme meeting, you're gonna have a person that represents from each of those goals that's gonna come together into that theme meeting, and they're gonna say, within my goal, we're either doing great, we're gonna deliver against our deliverables, or we got these things we need to escalate that we can't resolve ourselves. We've tried, but we can't, we need this skill set, we don't have it, or we need more money, or we need whatever, right? So they escalate that. And then the theme says, well, you need to keep in mind, this is the priority. So amongst these related goals, this is the priority. So as you go into your next iteration in 2 weeks or whatever, you need to be keeping these priorities in mind as you're planning your next iteration, right? So that's what they're getting there from. So priority is being cascaded and impediments are being escalated, right? And then the next level up, your objective. So remember, we've got our goals and then our themes and our objectives. Same thing's happening with the objectives. But now at the objectives, you can see this is the first time we're introducing our executive. Now, right? So now we've got our executive. Now every objective has an executive sponsor, because the executive is on point for the strategy. Remember, our objective is a 1 to 3 year movement against the strategy, right? So they're doing the same thing. For my theme, these are the things that are going well. These are the things that are a priority for us. These are the things that aren't going well and we need support, right? And so then what happens is the executive meeting happens every Tuesday, and all the executives come together, and for the items that they are executive sponsor on, they can now speak to strategy, because they're going to have this information because it's coming to them every week. And they could now choose to speak to their peer group, and they can say either, within my themes, whatever's going on in my themes, which represent the goals, of course, they can say, here's what's not going well and we need help with this. And I need something, this, or I need that. Or they can say, hey, within my objective, I see this market trend that's not looking positive. I see a risk that's going on, right? Or I can say, here's the achievements that we're going to deliver in the next month. This is what's coming, right? So they can choose to talk about any of these things. And maybe they would have anyway, but we're providing a structured formula so that they have this information. Yeah, blaze. Okay, there we go. So, so that's that, and that's how that works. And you can see this is just a more illustrated version of what that looks like, right? The goals, the themes, what's getting escalated versus what's getting cascaded, and how that works. All right, technology, we use Jira and Confluence, so you're gonna see that here. In Jira, we have 2 use cases. You've got your teams that are just doing their thing in Jira, right? They're running their sprints, they're running Kanban. This is agnostic to Scrum or Kanban, or actually because we use an inherent cycle for finance teams, for marketing teams, for American sales teams, we don't really care the process the teams are using as long as they're running in a 2-week iterative cycle. And as long as they're consuming priority and escalating impediments. It doesn't make any difference what the team is doing necessarily, as long as they're running in those paths, which makes the system real flexible. So any team can adopt it. And anyway, they're running in Jira. The second piece here is that high level organizational overview. But it's important that we have both of those views. So the teams can do their thing, and then they're just generating data for us for that high level overview that we want to get anyway. So we get both views. Both views to report. So we've got exec view as well as team up there. We also use Confluence to keep everybody organized and have a one-stop place for all of the information. And here you can see an example of strategic objective. It's actually a theme. So, but you can see kind of how this will work, and you can see down on the left-hand side here, there's different goals, the different goals that are going on, and how those have been documented here as well. So we use Confluence to keep it all together. If you guys have used Jira and Confluence, you know, these two tools work pretty nicely together. They're both Atlassian and Playwright together. As far as information and metrics, you can see, I mentioned before, each of the themes has a chart that they're using to drive things like a North Star. So the goal leaders, the goals, remember, are getting their priorities from the themes. They know what they need to accomplish within their goals in order to meet the intent of themes. Theme leaders have measurable targets. The theme leaders can confirm that they're aligned with their executives. Because remember, the themes are contributing to that strategic objective, which has an executive sponsor. So they've got that leadership there. The PMO is providing weekly reporting. So it's qualitative and quantitative. The qualitative is like red, yellow, green. How do you think it's going, right? Then the quantitative is like, is all of the OKRs or KPIs, plus we're also working with strategic financial reporting as well. So is this stuff moving the needle, right? So if we look at, let's build there. It's not. Okay, but if you look at this, the financial reporting tells you, like, are we meeting the objectives, right? Are we seeing the outcomes that we wanted to see? So, there's activity and then there's outwards, right? Like, are we seeing the results that we want to see? Here's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, that's important too. So this is about activity. This is about results, right? All right, so then get into governance. The PMO did run a governance committee as well. So as we started making iterative changes to the model, as we started introducing new ideas to the model, we wanted to run that by a governance committee first, just to make sure we didn't just sort of throw something out there. Wanted to have a review with a group of people just to make sure everything was running okay. So that's what the governance committee was there for. It had the PMO, corporate strategy, strategic finance, and business analysts in there. The theme leaders and goal leaders did also do quarterly business reviews with the execs, where they would do like a deep dive. They would come in for an hour and a half, really dig into the projects with the exact theme, and then we do that quarterly so that the execs could ask a lot of questions and things like that. So the executives really knew the details of what was going on. And then we did have a full governance process. So we weren't just chasing every 4 to 6 month idea that people had. We did actually have a full governance process. Let's talk about iterative reviews. Yep, there we go. I'm running out of time. Okay, so this is, I believe, my last slide. So perfect. The first one here, I'll give you some examples of things we were thinking about as we were doing this. Imagine this is a pretty big model, and we've got a pretty big system running there, right? This train's moving. So the first one here, evaluating this themes concept. Is this efficient? Is it inefficient? Are we adding overhead to the goals by sort of connecting that, inserting that theme layer? Is that making this more complex than it needs to be? Does it only need to be there for some related goals and not for others? And sort of thinking about that whole idea of, like, are we adding more than needs to be there, right? Second is this idea of tiering the goals. So the goals are all prioritized as an organization so that we have that ability for people to have the autonomy. Let's say you have resource crunches between goals. Well, now the general population can look at that and they go, my goal's number 5 and your goal's number 10. I can make the decision myself as to which falls more important, right? And should we tier those so that, maybe these are tier 1 goals and these are tier 2 goals and things like that. So we started thinking about that. And then the last one is, like, if you've worked with executives, you understand they have their own stakeholder group, which is usually the board, right? And so are we adding complexity to their lives by having them think about our operating model? So sort of thinking sort of downwards is the hierarchy and what's going on for us, or should we be tailoring what we're doing to sort of help generate the content they need for their stakeholder group, right? So we obviously need to run as an organization, but are we adding overhead to them so that they can, deliver for their stakeholder group? And how does that differ, right? They have their board. and we need certain things from them. So how do we get the deliverables we need from them as far as priority and things like that without adding complexity, and then give them the deliverables they need for their stakeholder group? So hopefully that makes some sense. Everybody still with me? All right. I was afraid I was going to talk too fast and everybody was going to be like, I know I speak English more than you guys do. So, okay. So there's my contact info. Snap a shot of it. Look me up on LinkedIn. Hopefully that was good and you guys enjoyed it. So happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So,